Good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I am your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I thank you for joining me on this rather lovely Friday night in Pittsburgh. I always comment on the weather when I do my shows, and I am so happy that on this Friday night, on this Good Friday, I will not have to put my heat on or even my AC. It's perfect weather, and I hope it's a lovely Good Friday wherever you are. If you're celebrating, if not, I hope it's a lovely Friday. Whatever floats your boat, I hope it's a good one. And before I continue, I'd like to, as always, ask you to please like and subscribe to our live YouTube channel. We bring you live shows each and every day and night, including this show. And a few hours earlier, as you saw, we have Touchdown Under with Maddie Peverall and Mark Davison are coming to you live every Friday from good old Australia, or whatever they call Australia. Good old, I don't know. I know Mark always says, good on you, mate. So there you go. So please check that out. Check out The Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis and Shannon White every Monday. And me, of course, me. Forgot about the old Tony every Monday. Of course, you can check out Steelers Preview with Jeff Hartman and Brian and Dave Schofield. We have the Scobro Show with Dave and his brother Rich every Tuesday. And every Wednesday we have, in the off season it'll be called The Curtain Call, and that's with Jeffrey Benedict, who's a new, I guess, quarterback. I don't want to, hopefully I don't offend Shannon by saying that, but I guess Jeffrey Benedict has now moved into the role of Michael Beck, who he'll still be doing lots of shows for Behind the Steel Curtain, but he's moved on he's graduated from school now, so he'll be moving on to his life's work. And joining him every Wednesday will be Shannon White, and I watched her show the other night, and I thought it was fantastic. So please check that out. Shannon brings a lot of knowledge and ease, and he grounds every show that he's on. Of course, so does Jeffrey. And of course, Jeffrey is so extraordinary and knowledgeable. So please check that out. Of course, we have what I'm missing some shows. We have lots of shows. I'm drawing a blank. It's been a long day, but I'm drawing a blank. But please check out all of our live shows, and of course, you can catch them after the fact on any audio platform of your choosing. And of course, we also have, we're also live on Facebook. I always forget that part. We're live on Facebook with each of those. Every show that you find live on YouTube, you can also find live on Facebook. So if you're watching me on Facebook, if you're watching me stumble through my words, you know that. So hi, and be kind in the comment section, as I always say. And of course, you can catch all those shows after the fact on any audio platform of your choosing. I personally enjoy iHeartRadio because I have it downloaded on my Roku channel or app. So please check those out. And of course, you can check out all of our audio only or exclusive audio only shows on any audio platform of your choosing. We have the Live Mic with Michael Beck, Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman, the Stat Geek with Dave Schofield, From the Cutting Room Floor with Jeffrey Benedict. We have what Ian's talking about. We have so many shows. So please check those out. You won't be sorry. And it's the platform has grown so much, both live and the audio only side. It's just grown so much in the last couple of years. It's actually pretty amazing, and it's going to be round the clock coverage with the 2022 NFL draft coming up. I mean, as I kind of kid all the time, this is the favorite time of year for a lot of football fans. They love this time of year. They love the draft season probably more than the NFL regular season. In the case of many, they do. There's no denying that, and I think some will proudly say that they do. So this is a great year for Behind the Steel Curtain, or great time of year for Behind the Steel Curtain, because they bring you just great draft coverage, and you won't be sorry. The content will be there, and it'll be plentiful. So please check that out. And of course, check out Behind the Steel Curtain, their website, where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown. It's your one-stop shop for all of your Steelers needs. So let's check out the live chat and see who we have in here. I think I saw who number one was. The first one in was Daredevil, followed by Steeler Chick 46, who thought she was number one, but nope, Daredevil beat her by just a half a second. So welcome to those two. Terry Milas, my good friend Terry, Steelers Pittsburgh, deal with it. Sherry Richards. She says, Tony, let's talk Steelers. Hope you're well. I am doing as well as I can be. I'm having a good day overall. Even though it's been a long day with work, I'm having a good day. Clarence Washington, Jason Rollins, Eric Dove, Brian Brown. Thanks, Mean Joe. Zagros Maziri is with us. And I think that's it. Donovan Kuzi. All right. So we have a full show. Of course, I have to start off tonight's show on a somber note by talking about the events of last Saturday, the tragic death of Steelers quarterback Dwayne Haskins, who was hit by a vehicle while trying to cross a Florida highway last Saturday morning at around 6:30 a.m. So, I mean, it was obviously a shock to everybody. I mean, it just, once news hit of that, it was just, everything just stopped as far as Steelers news and Steeler Nation, the fans, everybody involved with the organization. I mean, they just they took time to mourn and to process what had happened. And, I'm not really good at that kind of stuff as far as expressing my emotions that way. And, Brian's really good at that. Lots of other people are, but I mean, it was just, just such a sad ending, obviously. I mean, he was 24 years old. He was going to be 25 in May on May 3rd. And, as much as we like to talk about Mitchell Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, that dynamic as far as them going, battling it out possibly for the starting spot and whatever unnamed rookie you want to throw in there. Dwayne Haskins had a good shot to compete for that starting job. He had all the talent in the world. He was a first-round pick of Washington back in 2019. And things didn't work out there. And he was here and he put in a good year's work after Pittsburgh signed him last winter. And, everything seemed bright and promising as far as at least his football life and his life were concerned. And then, everything just sort of ended, and it just shows you how random and sudden things can change and how precious life is and how fragile it is. And, I'm not going to get too much into, why he was crossing, the highway. I mean, if the police don't yet know, how am I supposed to know? But again, as I said, I'm not that good at that kind of stuff, expressing myself in that way, but I am good at, and I think, writing and using that in a constructive way, and maybe podcasting eventually. And, I figure I'd rather just use the time to maybe, I don't know, change people's opinions on what off the field issues are. And, I wrote an article the other day and it was well received, mostly, I thought. And I wish I didn't have to write the article, by the way, but, I wrote it because I think, things are so skewed now when it comes to these athletes. And, obviously, not to sound like a cliche, but there's a 24/7 news cycle, and social media is so omnipresent and prevalent. And, everything that these guys do, whether it's a football player, a hockey player, whatever athlete, basketball player you want to talk about, I mean, we know everything instantly right away. And I think the perception has changed a bit, or at least the idea of what off-field issues are. And, I received a lot of emails about that article I wrote the other day, and a lot of them were supportive, and a lot of them were like, what are you talking about? I mean, look what happened to him. Look what happened to Haskins. Look at how his life ended. So how can you say off the field issues weren't a part of that? But my contention was, what in his life really could have pointed to. And again, we don't know what happened. It might turn out to be the worst possible thing. Maybe he was inebriated and had a blood alcohol level twice the legal limit, and that's why he had poor judgment. He was walking across the highway when his car was disabled. I don't know, but even if that was the case, what in his history led up to, or would lead you to believe that he was heading down a destructive path, and that's what a lot of people, including Gil Brandt, the former Cowboys executive who was responsible for helping to build a lot of great Cowboys teams in the past. And there's somebody who's been around football. He should know. He should have known better than to say what he said, when he basically said that Haskins was living to die. And, that's really what triggered me to write that article is, no, he wasn't. I mean, again, maybe he made a stupid decision last Saturday morning, which contributed to his death, but nothing in his history said, oh my gosh, this guy is heading down a horrible path. I mean, there were no Pac-Man Jones. He didn't have that kind of a pattern in his life where he was constantly being arrested, getting in trouble with the law. Nothing like with what happened when Joe Mixon. There were no problems like with Ryan Leaf experience when he hit rock bottom after his career. He was breaking into his neighbor's home to steal prescription pills. There was nothing like that in Haskins' life. I mean, he was clearly, if you believe the stories, he was immature. He was maybe a bit unaware. He didn't have self-awareness. That's one of the things I read about him. Obviously, he was photographed partying with strippers during the height of the pandemic, and that was a black mark against him. He was having trouble, maybe perhaps grasping the enormous responsibility of being a first-round pick and being a quarterback who was a first-round pick, but nothing would point to him. If he was doing something nefarious in Florida, nothing could point that. So for people like Gil Brandt to come out and say that, to me, that was unfair for him. And it's also unfair for a lot of these athletes. Because I think, again, how we look at off-field issues is different than how we looked at them in the past. Before social media, especially. In the past, an off-the-field issue was a real criminal activity in most cases. Now it's, well, he's out partying. He's a bad apple. He has demons. And, before I wanted to watch it again before I came on to the show tonight, I wanted to watch Ken Stabler's A Football Life. And there's somebody who had a notorious partying reputation. He liked the ladies. He didn't necessarily believe in a curfew. He got, when he was at Alabama, he started his collegiate career at Alabama before he was drafted into the NFL, and he got fined one time. He got demoted by Bear Bryant because he broke curfew. So I mean, there's a guy who certainly probably had to grow up a little bit, and he never really stopped. He had some problems after his career with DUIs and everything. But when people look back at his career, his football career, they kind of chuckle at his partying ways. And same with Bobby Lane, who was the Lions and Steelers quarterback. He had DUIs. If you read Myron Cope's book, he talks about at least one or two DUIs that he and Lane got out of because the police gave him a break. So. Cope loved to go out and party with the boys too. Joe Namath had that kind of reputation. I mean, there's so many. James Harrison talked about it on his podcast appearance a couple years ago with Willie Colon. He talked about how a bunch of his teammates and him would go out this is during Cowher's years, and drink and party and sometimes not even go home and show up to the facility or show up to the stadium to play a game the next day, and we just laugh at that now because that's usually how this thing works. We laugh at those kind of stories when they're in past tense, but when they happen in the moment, it's like, oh my gosh, we got to do something about this. And another thing I've noticed is people act like nothing's ever happened before. Like Bill Cowher's a great example. A lot of stuff's happened under Cowher's watch that people just conveniently forget about. Arrests, fights, drug problems, disciplinary problems, you name it. But when we think of Cowher now, we think of him as this perfect coach, his disciplinarian. There's those memes going around. You see him every now and then, where it's not him really saying this, but the caption says, "Do I have to come back and straighten things out?" Come on. Things were just as goofy and crazy under Cowher and Noel, and as people seem to think they are with Tomlin. So, I just, and when it gets down to not just partying and strippers and things like that, but when it gets down to like social media activity, when that's looked at as an off the field issue, to me, that's you're really going down a slippery slope with these guys. And Juju's been vilified by many for his social media activities, the fun he likes to have away from the field, and with milk crate challenges and that slip and slide thing he videotaped himself doing. I guess it was last week. And you got people writing columns about it and how he's a clown and how he doesn't care about winning. And and there are people out there who really, really look at these issues, something even as minor as that, as an off-field problem, as something that maybe should affect their careers. And I just think that's kind of ridiculous. And I guess my point is, with Dwayne Haskins, his lifestyle up until his untimely death wasn't much different than most young professional athletes, whether it's football, hockey. I back in the days before social media, I heard a lot of stories about the Penguins, like the late 00 Penguins, that first Sid Cup era. Not Sid, of course. Sid's a choir boy by, I'm sure he's not, but he's kept himself out of the spotlight. But yeah, like there's the other guys. I won't name names, but I've heard secondhand accounts from coworkers and women encounters they've had with those Penguins players of that era. Of course, everything's different now because of social media, and everybody has a camera in their pocket in the name of a cell phone, an iPhone, a smartphone, Android, whatever. But you hardly ever hear of stories of players out partying now, because if they're out partying, their likeness is going to be captured either with a picture or a video, and it's going to go on social media, and it's going to go viral. And believe me, these guys, they're all schooled in that now. Trust me, somewhere along the way, whether it's in college or through their agents or through their teams that just drafted them, they get schooling on how to conduct themselves away from the field or away from the rink or away from the court, whatever, because they know the spotlight's on them 24/7. So, when people act like, oh my gosh, the NFL, as far as this off the field stuff, it's worse than it's ever been. It's probably better than it's ever been, because everything nowadays, from an actual serious thing that leads to an arrest, all the way down to, you dancing in the locker room, is scrutinized, and there's hours of airtime devoted to it, and that's kind of another point of the article I wanted to make, is we've gone from just arrests and things of that nature being considered off-field issues to everything almost getting equal weight. And especially, like, the arresting might not even be that big a deal if you like the player, but if you hate the player, or if you think your team hasn't won enough championships, well, something as benign as making a stupid, albeit tasteless joke, like Devin Bush did last year on Twitter, that gets scrutinized even more than something as serious as domestic violence, for example. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that. I just want to get that off my chest because, again, back to Dwayne Haskins, I don't know what happened. It might be months before we really find out the true story. Who knows? But nothing in his past could have suggested that, oh my gosh, this guy was heading down a horrible, horrible path, and I think it was unfair for Gilbrandt to say what he did, and actually was downright cruel to say what he did. Because again, a lot of young professional athletes live a similar lifestyle than that Dwayne Haskins did, and to say that's considered a destructive path is unfair. I think we've seen examples of real destructive behavior from professional athletes, and that did not fit Dwayne Haskins, his life, his identity. So that's all I had to say about that. And I'll just move on now. And actually, the thing that I was really charged up about before the unfortunate news about Dwayne Haskins last Saturday morning, I was arguing with people on Twitter about the semi-controversy involving Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph due to the fact that Trubisky invited, and that's actually where Haskins was when tragedy struck, but that when Trubisky invited many teammates down to his Florida home to work out and sort of bond, and Rudolph, for whatever reason, nobody knows why. I mean, people jump to conclusions, but nobody really liked the fact, or few liked the fact that, or agreed with the fact, I should say, that Rudolph decided not to go. And if it was for the reasons that many people were saying, that he did it because he's in competition with Trubisky for the starting spot, well, I can see that side of it, and I can't believe more people don't see that side of it. People are saying, well, they're not adversaries, they're not competitors. Well, they are competitors. Trubisky he was signed here to be to at least have the inside track for the starting quarterback spot for the Steelers, and that's something that Rudolph has had his eye on. It's probably been his goal for years. And Ben Roethlisberger retires, and what do? You go out and you bring in Mitch Trubisky, which not much of a shock, but in Mason Rudolph's eyes, he's thinking, "Come on, give me a legitimate chance." So you waited. If you're Mason Rudolph, you waited your turn, and now there's this new guy coming in. And to me, if I'm him, I'm thinking, well, if I go down there and train with Mitch Trubisky, I'm kind of conceding that he's the leader of the team now. So I can see why Rudolph wouldn't want to go and train. I can see why it would be awkward, and I'm sure Trubisky understands that. And if I'm Mason Rudolph, if that's the fuel he needs, if that's the motivation he needs, if that's what he needs to be focused, is to not go and train with the guy he's going to be competing with for the starting job. To me, I'm fine with that, because at the end of the day, the goal is to for the Steelers to find the guy to be their next quarterback, their next starting quarterback, and to be successful at it. And whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Mason Rudolph or a draft pick or whomever, to me, it shouldn't matter. And there shouldn't be this much criticism of Rudolph for not going down. And it's funny, Steelers fans, a lot of the people in the fan base are like big on weakness and or not showing weakness and being strong or not being soft. And yet they expect poor old Mason Rudolph to swallow a lot of pride. I think by most accounts, it's pretty accurate to say that Ben Roethlisberger wasn't a big mentor for Mason Rudolph, and he probably didn't go out of his way to be nice to him, and he probably shunned him in a lot of ways. He did not like the fact that the Steelers drafted Rudolph in the third round in 2018. He kind of made that known. So, but then the second Ben Roethlisberger retires, people were mad at Rudolph for not publicly congratulating him on a great career, and now that he has a chance to compete for the starting spot, they want him to swallow his pride again and go and train with Mitch Trubisky as sort of a bonding thing. I don't get that. If it's what it takes for him to be motivated, and who says there's any malice involved on him? Maybe he, like Brian pointed out on Monday, maybe he, it was like Trubisky invited him down 2 weeks ago, all these guys. So, just because these guys are millionaires and have great lifestyles, and doesn't mean they can just drop everything and go and train in a different state with 2 weeks notice. So it could have been something where he just wasn't available, and we're reading too much into it, as we tend to do as sports fans. So I said my piece on that. Let's go easy on Mason Rudolph. Who really cares that he didn't go down and train with Mitch Trubisky, the guy, his number one competitor for the starting quarterback spot? Who cares that he didn't do that? I mean, let's there's things that are you should worry about, on the field stuff that you should worry about, and stuff that who gives a freak. And that's one of those things. Who cares that Mason Rudolph didn't go down and work out with these guys? And who says that they're not working out other times that we don't know about? So again, this is another product of, or byproduct of, the 24/7 news cycle, where it's set up that there always has to be something that we have to be outraged over, and something that we have to debate and take sides on. And that was another example of that, because Mason Rudolph didn't go down and train with Mitch Trubisky and sing Kumbaya. All of a sudden, let's take sides, and I'm on team Mitch and I'm on team Mason. That's silly. Anyway, I rambled on long enough. But as the title suggests, we are, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be either, half of us will be happy and half of us will be outraged over the Steelers' second and third round draft picks. That's how close we are to the 2022 NFL draft. So it's almost here. And I've been doing some exercises. I did one on Wednesday. I finally got into the Pro Football Mock Draft Simulator, and I wanted to see. I don't pick myself. I usually let them pick for me, the simulator. It's interesting to see what they come up with, and I did like dozens. And from what I saw, the data that I consumed, if you will, or observed, receiver was like the number one. It was the leader as far as what this mock draft simulator kept producing for a first round pick anyway. I did it like dozens of times. And then finally I decided to do 10 of them, and I recorded 10. And I know it's a small sample size, but what it showed me was that the simulator had the Steelers taking a receiver 3 times. Chris Olive was the first one. And then immediately after that, Jake London from USC. And then the 6th simulation, Garrett Wilson from Ohio State. And then, of course, you throw in the rest of them. Obviously, Kenny Pickett was in there. Matt Corral was in there. Daxton Lynch, the safety from Michigan, was an interesting pick, I think, because I think Kyle Hamilton, I would love to get that guy from Notre Dame, but he's probably going to be gone by the top 10. And Daxton Lynch, at least on a lot of the big boards, is hovering around 30. But the Steelers need, they at this moment anyway, they need a safety with Edmonds still unsigned and Tyrann Mathieu still unsigned, and who knows what their plans are for that position. So that was an interesting pick. Trevor Penning, the tackle from Northern Iowa, he appeared twice. He was the only player to appear twice in this 10 when I did these 10 simulations. And of course, there were 2 corners, Clemson's Andrew Booth and Washington's Trent McDuffie. So it seemed like the simulator, at least with the first round picks, hit on their needs more than last year. Last year, I tried this exercise, and it seemed like it was all over the place. And I think the main reason is the Steelers had so many perceived needs, not just starters, but depth. I mean, it's so many different positions. And there was that whole thing where they seemed to be favoring drafting a running back in first round, namely Najee Harris. And so many people out there, experts and fans alike, did not want them to draft a running back. So I think that influenced the data last year with the mock simulator, because it was all over the place, and it was picking players that didn't make any sense to me. But I think that's because there were so many different directions that the Steelers could have gone last year, and not just because like this year they seem to be in much better shape as far as what they did in free agency. They seem to address enough needs that they can go the quote unquote best player available route this year. Whereas last year they needed help in a lot of different areas, or at least that was the perception heading into the draft. So I thought it was an interesting result. And, the more I think about it, I mean, receiver might be the leader in the club. I mean, I know quarterback's getting all the pub, but like we talked about before, Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis are not going to be there. I hate to talk in absolutes, but it seems highly unlikely that they're going to make it past both of them, or one of them is going to make it out of the top 10, and that both of them are going to make it out of the top 15, if that makes any sense, what I just said. And probably a third quarterback's going to be gone by the time they pick at 20. So you're looking at two quarterbacks. And if neither one of those quarterbacks is somebody that they like, then maybe they have to go in a different direction. And perhaps that's receiver, because there's a lot of great value from what I've researched in the receiver position. There are at least five guys that could very easily be picked in the top between 10 and 20 or 10 and 25. So, I mean, that's right in the Steelers' wheelhouse. So maybe it'll be a receiver, and it wouldn't be a bad way to go when you look at what they lost to free agency and again, the at least perceived value of the receiver position in this year's draft. So that's pretty much all I had to say. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts over the next 10, 15 minutes or so. So let's take some comments and questions. And of course, we got the always hard-hitting Mule Skinner up first, who says, and these are those absolutes, but this is what people do. He says, none of these quarterbacks this year are worth drafting. If Colbert drafts one thinking he will change the future, he is on acid. Well, that's your Mule Skinner for you. I don't think Kevin Colbert's on acid, but that's certainly, the rest of that is certainly a popular opinion among many, that this quarterback crop isn't the strongest. But again, like I said many times, you're not drafting the entire class. You're drafting one quarterback, if you draft one at all. And the key is to draft the right one. And if you find one who happens to be really good, who cares, right? I mean, who cares if about next year's class or the class after that? The bottom line is you have to find your guy as quickly as possible, because the quicker you find your guy and the quicker you find the right guy, then the quicker you're going to be a contender again, a legit Super Bowl contender. So let's see what else we have here. Minra, Jane, and Bert says, please no Corral 20. That's a reach. Well, that's an opinion. I don't know if that's just a, you don't know if he's going to be a reach. He could be the next Dan Marino for all you know. Deal with it says, I got a feeling who they are going after as far as receiver. Honestly, I looked at a dark horse similar to Deontay pick. Well, who is that, Dale? Well, you said you have a feeling. Who is it? What's your gut say? This is from Myron, Jane, and Bert again, and they say, personally, if I was Mason Rudolph, I would not go to Mitch invite either. And again, it comes down to maybe what kind of perception does that give your bosses if you go and train and be the guest of the guy that you've just signed with to come in and compete for the starting spot. This guy that has been in your system for 4 years, he goes. What does that say? Does that say that he? You know how these coaches think. Well, he doesn't want it bad enough. He's hanging out with the guy he's gonna be competing with for the starting spot. That's not the kind of toughness and focus and mettle I'm looking for. And believe me, if you think some of these coaches don't think that way, they do. But also, again, it comes back to the awkwardness of it. That's kind of an awkward thing. It's like I joked about it on Twitter on Saturday morning. Before the tragedy of the news of Dwayne Haskins, I was joking with people and I said, it's like if you're involved in a serious custody battle with your former significant other for your kids, and they say to you, "Hey, you want to come to have a picnic with us, and I'll host and take care of everything." Well, in your mind, you're thinking you're being all nice, and when we have our custody battle, maybe the judge is going to take that. You know what I mean? It's just, I'd want to focus on the kids and I don't know. To me, it would be weird. And Mule, this is an interesting and another hard opinion from Mule, and he says if Colbert doesn't fortify the O-line, this season is going to be, what to say, blank you again. Okay, well, I mean, that's interesting that you would say that, Mule, because I mean they went out and they signed James Daniels, who was considered by most people to be the biggest free agent pickup of their recent crop of free agent pickups. And this is a young guy, 24 years old, already a lot of starting experience in Chicago, former second-round pick. And he's going to step right in and be your starting right guard, unless something crazy happens. And, of course, they brought in Mason Cole, who is, as of right now, assumed or presumed to be the front runner for the center spot, starting center position. So, last you have Kevin Dotson, theoretically, again, like I keep saying, unless they hate him for some reason, which there's been rumors out there that he's in the doghouse. But you have Kevin Dotson at left guard, and then of course you have Dan Moore, who was your starter last year, a rookie. So I mean, that seems like a pretty good infusion of talent. So I don't know what more they can do at this point other than bringing in a Linderbaum, if he's available at 20, to be the center, or bringing in somebody like Trevor Penning to be the tackle, the guy who would presumably start or compete for a starting tackle spot against Moore or Shooks Okorafor. And remember, they gave him a decent contract in free agency. So when you say that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think they've already taken major steps with those two signings of Daniels and Cole of fortifying this line this offseason. So, they can bring in, I'm sure they're going to bring in more people in the draft, but it doesn't mean that they're going to pan out either. So. Dale Whitted says, it's all speculation about Mason Rudolph. Nobody can say for sure how he feels. Thank you very much. Nobody knows, and nobody knows why he didn't go. He might have had other plans. According to, the 24/7 news cycle, he just got out of a serious relationship. So who knows what's going through his mind? Maybe he doesn't feel like going and bonding with his work, but his coworkers right now. Maybe he wants to enjoy the rest of the offseason. Maybe he wants to stay focused and angry and determined to win to prove to his coaches that he should be the starting quarterback. And he doesn't want to let his guard down. And so it's something, everybody handles things differently. And Mason Rudolph not going to be with his teammates at Mitch Trubisky's home, to me, that's not something to be, to judge him on, even though we've already judged him a million times about it. I've heard so many crazy and unflattering things said about Mason Rudolph prior to last Saturday, and that one was just another one thrown in there. And again, like I said last Saturday, welcome to life without Ben Roethlisberger, because if they don't find their next great quarterback soon, it's going to be a lot of this kind of silly stuff that we fight about and complain about in lieu of winning football games. And Dale Whitted, who's talking about the receiver, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Shannon White wrote about this the other day. Alec Pierce of Cincinnati, he's going to be great. That's who Dale Whitted was talking about. Well, I think he's trying to gain some steam as a great or a good receiver prospect in this draft. So if that's who you're talking about, I have to go back and look at my notes right now. Excuse me for a second. I wrote all the positions down. Let's see where Alec Pierce is ranked. I don't see him on here. Maybe I missed him, or maybe it's not a receiver. I don't know. But Dale Willett seems to like whoever Alec Pierce is. If it's not a receiver, Dale Willett's pretty high on him. So whatever position that he plays. And the CUDA 70 asks, is anybody going to watch the Pittsburgh Maulers game? I'm sure there are going to be some people, but honestly, I forgot that they were even that the USFL was even starting up again. This is from Clarence Washington, who says, I'd like to see the Steelers draft either a top corner or a number one receiver in the first and a quarterback in the second. Well, I mean, that's, if you're looking at value, there might be better value as far as receivers and cornerbacks in the first round, and better value, at least in the eyes of the experts and the perception of this class right now, for quarterbacks in the second round. You got somebody like a Sam Howell or a Desmond Ridder, or Carson Strong, if they fall to the second round, or to the 52nd pick of the second round, I should say, then that might be that might offer great value. And Ms. Mule Skinner says James Daniels is junk in all capital letters, and he says he's watched a pile of Bears games. Well, I'm sorry to inform you, Mule, but looks like the rest of the NFL doesn't seem to share that opinion, because he was a well thought of free agent. So we'll see what happens. We'll see who's right. Keith Richards says trade up for quarterback in the draft. Minra says, Tony, what's the six-pack flavor for this evening? I don't really have anything right now. I don't really have any. I'm gonna eat some cheese pretzel nuggets whenever I'm done with the show. I don't know if I'm not gonna have any. I don't have any alcoholic beverages, but yeah, I don't really have a six-pack tonight. Steelers Pittsburgh says of Mason, he was apparently he was in California visiting his brother. He actually appeared on the Rich Eisen show recently, Mason Rudolph, and his brothers, I think he played football in college, and now he's trying to pursue acting, and he's been in a Lifetime movie, I think. So, maybe he was just, he had previous plans, and he had to visit his brother, and, you can't be in two places at once. The bottom line for Mason Rudolph is he needs to get himself as right mentally, physically, and emotionally as he possibly can to compete for the starting quarterback spot this year. That's what he has to focus on. And he can't worry about what other people think of him. He certainly can't worry about what the media and the public thinks of him right now, because that's all going to change if he comes on and becomes that quarterback that they supposedly had a first-round grade on. If he becomes that guy, then everything changes as far as the perception of Mason Rudolph. Isn't that funny how that works? So let's see what else we have here. And let's see what else. Let's see what Brian Brown says. Do you think the Steelers might mess around and wind up with one of these awesome safeties? Well, I mean, if they can, if they can land a player, and I hate saying this because, if a guy's good enough to be a second round pick, then, but if they can get a Daxton Hill in the second round, that'd be great. But as far as free agent safeties, because I don't think, obviously Kyle Hamilton's that's a total pipe dream at this point. He's going to be gone by the top 10. Tyrann Mathieu, I mean, it's like I don't even know what to believe with that anymore. You hear stories that there's still an interest there. Then you hear stories that there isn't an interest there, at least not on his end because he wants too much money. I don't know. To me, I think the smart move would just to bring Terrell Edmunds back. He's younger. He's going to be cheaper. He's solid. He's getting better every year, and he works well with Minkah Fitzpatrick. And if you can get Edmunds at a fair price, then that's going to make it easier to pay Minkah Fitzpatrick his mega contract. And believe me, he's gonna get paid top safety money whenever the time comes. So if you bring in Tyrann Mathieu and pay him what he supposedly is going to want, which I'm guessing is going to be roughly 12 to 14 million, well, it's going to make it a little bit harder to work the deal with Minkah Fitzpatrick because it's probably going to drive his price up because he knows he's the top free safety in the NFL, and you bring in a 30-year-old guy who's a strong safety, yes, but he's still 30 years old. He's much older, and he's theoretically past his prime, and you're paying him this kind of money. Well, if I'm Minkah Fitzpatrick, I'm going to want that much more. So at least that's how I feel about it. So Richard Adamson asks, what are the chances the Steelers move down in any round of the draft? I mean, how often do they do that, really? I mean, that's what cracks you up. Like I read an article the other day about Tyler Linderbaum, and somebody got on me on Twitter saying they never draft people they don't whose pro day they don't attend, and apparently that hasn't happened at least in the first round since 2009. Ziggy Hood, but they haven't traded down since 2001 in the first round, and yet every year people think that's a real possibility. It's something they should do. That's a trend that they forget about. But this trend, this pro day thing, is ironclad. So what are the chances? I mean, I don't. If they traded down, I guess the best spot would be the first round because you would probably get the best value in return for that. So to me, if they were going to trade down, it would be in the first round. I do believe the Chiefs have a couple of late first round picks now because of the Tyreek Hill trade, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe I read the wrong list. But anyway, other than that, I don't see them doing that. So. All right. Dark Storm asks of Edmunds and the Steelers' decision not to pick up his fifth-year option last year. Does Edmunds want to return? That's the question that people when they say, "Why don't they just sign Edmunds?" Well, maybe he doesn't want to come back. As Dark Storm says, maybe he feels disrespected. And Brian Brown clarifies that he meant the safeties in the draft. I mean, obviously, if they don't bring in if they don't have a safety by the draft, and it doesn't look like they're going to at this point. I mean, you have obviously Lewis Kine from Georgia, who is a top 50 prospect, at least on the big board that I have. Jalen Petrie from Baylor, Brisker from Penn State. I mean, they're all possibilities, and at least three of them look like they'd be legit second round prospects, and Hill is a borderline first round prospect. So, yeah, I mean, if they don't have a safety in the fold in 2 weeks, then they're probably going to use one of their premium picks to select one, because you have to if you're them. I mean, you have to give yourself, I hate to say insurance because you just don't know how these draft picks are going to pan out, but you have to give yourself a good prospect if you don't plan on, or if you can't come to terms with a veteran. So, and on that note, I think I'm going to call it a night. It's been a great show, spirited show. I wish I didn't have to talk about some of the things I did, but that's reality. But I hope you guys have a great holiday if you're celebrating Easter. If not, whatever holiday you're celebrating or whatever you're celebrating this weekend, I hope it's great, fun, peaceful, relaxing. And until I talk to you on Monday on The Hangover with Brian and Shannon, have a great weekend. And as always, go Steelers.